Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Q&A. I'm your host, Mod Ayiza, and joining us today is Mod Ash.
Hello.
Along with our wonderful PvP crew, we have PureSpam.
Good day, everybody.
Good day. We have Westham.
Good morning, fellas.
And we also have Dino.
Hello.
Hey, and they're all going to be here to discuss some of your PvP arena reward questions. I probably should have said this whilst I was introducing you, but never mind. I'll just ask how everyone is doing and what have you been up to this week. I'll start with you, Ash.
I've been at work, which is a change. In fact, I haven't been to the office so much for years now, and it is delightful to be back in, a nicely decorated environment with free tea and coffee on tap and all the other perks of working in an office. I've missed it. Thank you.
All right, it's good to see you back, and I'm sure you're making full use of the free tea. How are you doing today, PureSpam? And what have you been up to this week? Anything interesting happening on the old Pure scene?
Yeah, a bit of PKing here and there. I've been playing my Pure Iron Man a lot. I have been kind of putting off or procrastinating getting my cult necklace and the Slayer grind for years. And I finally got round to getting 93 Slayer, so I got my cult necklace. And I've been using that, doing some scaled raids, looking for those purple lights. Yeah, can't complain. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. How about you, Westham? How have you been? What have you been up to this week?
I've been doing good. I've been just testing out the new PJ timer in the wilderness, and yesterday I spent the day, or not entirety of the day, but I spent a bit of time just testing out the new max hits of the Void. Well, not the Void, but the thing that resembles Void. The Calamity, if I'm pronouncing that right.
You got it. Well, we'll have plenty of chance to talk about that throughout today's stream, but let's wrap up with Dino. How are you doing today, and what have you been up to this week?
Yeah, I'm all good. Similar to Westham, just basically streaming every single day, PKing, trying the new PJ timer. It's quite nice not being restricted to the caves, as we have been sort of the last 6 months. So
yeah, probably the nicest thing so far.
You've been let out to roam around, although I gather that there are only two major hotspots at the moment, at the altar and at the 30 line, so you kind of move from one area and put into another.
basically, yes, you see the same name, it's just at a different spot, but it's a change of scenery.
I look forward to us getting to do more across the surface. Heck, if we could even take some of the things Abyss was posting about last year in his famous video, I'd be very glad to get us some dev time for some of those. On the other hand, heck, if we could do another bounty hunter instead, maybe that would go down even better. Both would be ideal, of course, but can't have everything at the same time. But anyway, hopefully we can get you some more hotspots. At least the wilderness boss rework, which should come with more loot, may attract some people to that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, definitely, just anything. Bounty hunter or updates, we'll take anything, I think.
Yeah, I think the players would definitely prefer Bounty Hunter.
That's a sentiment I've mostly got.
A lot of asks for Bounty Hunter out there, and hopefully we'll be able to be focusing on that later this year. But I believe there is a question regarding Bounty Hunter, so I'll just save any talks for when that happens. Before then, I just have a couple of announcements to go over, and we've got some content that we want to show from our players. First of all, ! Game Update. You can get your hands on the new PvP Arena rewards in our rewards beta. Try out all of the new equipment and let us know your thoughts. You can find more info on these, as well as the Leagues 3 rewards, as well as Pulse 76 changes in our Game Update blog. So ! Game Update, send you a link to that. We also have ! Launcher. The new Jagex launcher is in open beta. You can now access Old School, RuneScape, and all of your other Jagex favorites, all from the one place. You can check out all of the information and download the launcher with ! Launcher. Now, in terms of user content, the first one is from Presley, titled Gillinor Pet Walking Services.
Aww. Little Papa Dial.
And how much GP you have to pay to have those pets walked? They look like a little bit of a nightmare.
I've just noticed the Jad.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, that's
Oh, the poor moles did well.
Oh, the mole and the chinchomper cuddling up. All right, the next one comes in from Ranyard, and it's titled Level 30 IRL. It's a nice birthday cake with a twisted bow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you,
That's
Good
good.
Pete.
way
Jealous
to
of that.
celebrate.
It's making me hungry. I'm
It
not
is. It
gonna
looks
lie.
like a nice cake. Yeah, I know. I said just before I joined as well, I'm starving. I've had like one yogurt today for food. I really should have ate before I came on stream, but anyhow. All right, the next one coming in is from 2 Pounder, and the title is My Character Fighting Zora. Wow, that is awesome.
Quite cool, to
That's
be
brilliant.
fair. Yeah, no, I'll write
That's
that.
sick.
It's like a canvas oil painting, is it? I think, by the looks of it.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah.
It's awesome. I really like seeing the real life art as opposed to digital art. Not that I don't like digital art. It's just it's so common nowadays to see digital pieces shared on our subreddit, at least. This is nice.
Maybe somebody will make an NFT of the physical thing somehow. I wish the environments at Zora looked a bit more like that. Quite apart from how great the snake in the sky look, Zora's Island has always looked a little bit Spartan to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit bland. Maybe that's just the way that Zora likes it.
So here's a thing, I mapped that, and which is why I don't mind criticising it on stream. I'd understood that the artists would get to do a polish pass afterwards and fix up Zolandra and the island and maybe pretty them up a little. But then they didn't, due to I think some unfortunately timed sick leave, and so the environment mapping there is mine still. And I'm not an artist. Could have been. I mean, people enjoyed playing with the thing regardless, so it didn't. I don't regret us, carrying on with the update, but it could have looked better.
The soundtrack
different
for Zora
times
is
back then.
incredible as well, isn't it? Big fan of that one.
Soundtrack's mine. Thank you very much.
All right, we have from Lord Jawn. This is, or Lord Yawn. Drew my buddy's UIM.
Poor goblin in the background.
Yeah, that
in
goblin's
the
not very
bag?
happy.
I
What's
think
he
if John
carrying?
Lennon were a massive killer, that might be how he'd look from the glasses.
Interesting one. All right, lastly, we have from Uber Digger 77, titled Elemental Runes. Nice little keychains. Pretty cool.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, actually, this is a surprise. I wasn't expecting this. Apparently, before we jump into the questions, there's a little teaser for what's coming up in next week's game update. So cue the trailer. Wow, that
Nice.
genuinely was news to me. Guardians of the Rift comes out next week.
Yeah,
and
I
apparently
didn't have
there's a lot of
a clue.
keychains.
They're quite fitting, though.
Yeah, true, actually. Pretty good job we actually had that one beforehand. It would have been interesting if it was, the UIM one before. Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. Next week, Guardians of the Rift. So look forward to that. Pretty big update. I'm going to be sinking my teeth into some Runecraft games. But now we have some questions regarding PvP, because that's what we are here for at the end of the day. So we've got everything out of the way. Let's jump straight into it. And the first question comes in from iSpace Cadet. And they have asked, what are the requirements to vote in the PvP rewards poll? Is it time spent in PvP worlds, or do other related activities count, such as Last Man Standing, Castle Wars, etc.? Also, when is the poll likely to happen, and when can we vote?
So I believe the The exact requirements are still unconfirmed, but I believe it's going to involve kill counts. That will include kill counts from the PvP worlds as well as the standard ones, but not just spending time on the PvP world, say as a skiller. LMS is also likely to be included. Castle Wars, I think not so much. The poll is likely to happen in April, and you'll be able to vote then.
Nice. Brilliant. Thanks, Ash.
For
Okay.
what it's worth, I should clarify, kill count. We took a record of people's kill count totals as they were about 2 weeks ago before we started planning this poll, so that anyone who's hoping that they can declare themselves a PvPer by killing their mate 20 times now or something like that, I'm afraid we already took a log of this one.
Okay, that's a nice little security measure.
All right, thanks for the answer. Next question from Bad at Naming, please help. They have said, tons of PvP polls in the past all failed, offering anything from best in slot PvP gear to tradables to unlocks, and lucrative PvP options often get criticism for affecting non-PvP parts of the game and being abused, like the issues Bounty Hunter faced. This time around, it seems like the proposal is untradable alternatives to popular PvP gear. What made you go with this approach, and why do you think it will be more successful?
The items are untradeable because, as the question itself says, things do get abused. Bounty Hunter faced those issues with gold farmers rocking up, and they, of course, aren't interested in a fair or real fight. They'll just kill each other as fast as possible to maximize reward per time, and they will therefore get their rewards a lot faster than a real player will. And while one can tolerate a little bit of farming on the side, but it shouldn't be disproportionately better than what real players are getting from playing the content properly. It just shouldn't. So we've gone with untradables to make it less appealing to gold farmers and other abusers. In an ideal world, of course, we'd be able to just launch anything we liked and have the support team get rid of all of them in real time for us. That would be the ideal. Realistically, didn't seem to work for Bounty Hunter. Wouldn't want to try it again now and just hope, because I don't think it would go any better. Hence the untradables. Now, as for the criticism that PvP options are affecting non-PvP parts of the game and being abused there, a lot of the things we've pitched are very restricted insofar as you can't actually do PVM across most of the game with them, which cuts down on how useful they are as items, but may get us away from the complaint about these things, being BIS for PVM activities or affecting PVM in ways that wouldn't be appreciated, and also the fact that if the poll is only open to people who satisfy the checks we discussed in the last question, trying to restrict the impact to actual PvP seems more than usually appropriate.
I think another thing about the rewards and the game mode in general is like the whole point of MMOs is kind of that progression aspect, and in PvP it's kind of just about building up that bank and slaying people for the items and getting rewards. But with the new PvP arena, we also have an ELO system coming in, of course. So you're gonna see yourself kind of getting to the higher levels, trying to get to a higher rank, which is another massive part about the PvP arena. I think that's gonna make a lot of people wanna really grind it out, and a nice competitive aspect too, which I'm really looking forward to.
Certainly hope so.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much new territory for us. Give or take the Birthorpe Games Room, which might have been an early attempt at inventing an ELO system, ELO system back in 2004-ish. This is very new for the team to try and deal with. I don't think we're going to be able to have it as mathematically precise as a true one would ideally be, but I do hope that having a decent rank will be seen as a form of prestige, and that there'll be those who do think it's worth going for. Also, in future, we did PvP All Stars some years ago, one-off invitational tournament. Well, it was all stars because, as I understand at the time, we picked a load of famous people and invited them to come and fight. Hello to possibly some of you. But in future, if we were picking players who had high ranks because of their rank, that might be a way of spreading the attention around a lot more people and picking up some of the people with the talent out there, even if they haven't
Yeah,
established
that sounds
themselves
really
so well online
promising.
so far.
Yeah, really
I
cool.
know Mob Kieran's been quite excited about that possibility. Let's hope it can go that way.
That sounds promising, if anything. And then at the same time, as long as like the high elo ranks generate more reward than what you would at like a lower elo, that to me sounds good.
Quite understandable. I haven't seen the balancing yet myself. We may also have some incentive not to provide an in-game benefit for boosting your rank, because with the best will in the world, people are always going to find ways of manipulating this stuff.
Yeah.
And the less benefit they get from doing so, the less, well, the more likely it is that it will only be done by people who actually care about it and are fighting for real. But I also get why we'd want more reward if possible.
I'm interested to hear from Westham and Dino on this one, actually. But sorry, I'm just locking you out of the answer, PureSpam. But how do you feel about moving away from traditional drops into the new PvP arena rewards? Because they are untradeable, and the value, the wealth that you'll get will be from the repair costs, which we've not actually spoke about yet publicly and mentioned what they are. But given the power level of the items, I'd imagine they'll be relatively significant, but you would be seeing a pile of cash as opposed to, an epic item drop into the floor.
You want to take it first time? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
It's definitely not like traditional, but as far as loot keys have been out now, so I think a lot of people have gone past the items on the floor already, and you're getting used to seeing keys now. So I wouldn't mind, say, opening a key and seeing loads of cash in there, rather than some items. Obviously, it won't be all the time because all the old gear will still be gear, but.
Yeah, for myself as well. I was a massive fan of like original LMS. I know high stakes LMS was quite popular when it first got released. Bodhi even got it active, or when it died out a little bit. So I'm not against it either, honestly. I feel like, as long as me and Dino have been doing it, it doesn't really matter what we get, if I'm honest. Like, obviously a big kill is very hype, but it gets a bit boring, like the longer you do it.
Okay, all right. That's good to know, because I imagine that, in all fairness, if this was to work out well with the PvP arena rewards, then future PvP rewards would probably follow a very similar design, just again to prevent or disincentivize the whole gold farming aspect of it. For some, I'd imagine that. Yeah, exactly like that.
One suggestion that I had coming from a couple friends of mine as well was like, what happens when you have all the rewards from the PvP arena? Like, what's the incentive to continue? And then I don't know if this is something that you guys actually want to do, but instead, let's say, of having to use cash to repair the items, what about spending points to repair them? Assuming it is very expensive.
I think the only problem with that would be that you would essentially then be converting points into gold, so it would then bring an incentive to farm.
Yeah, I think another incentive
is farm,
is
get your arena points. Oh, go on, sorry.
Like, you've got the imbue rings as well as part of the rewards, and like right now, for example, on IPK, I don't really want to use the B ring unless it's imbued to get like obviously double the strength bonus to it, and I don't want to do Nightmare Zone every time I die. So at least you can.
Yeah, that's very much what that one was for.
Yeah, which is really nice.
Yeah. The hope was that some of them would be consumable. I mean, the imbue scroll is the main one that's consumable, to be honest, and I'd expect it to be relatively cheap in the shop, because, I mean, just as you don't want to spend hours grinding Nightmare Zone, you might also not want to spend hours grinding this in between PK trips. So I expect it's going to be relatively cheap. Not so good for bringing people back to keep earning, but I'd hope it's a reason to pop in occasionally. And also, those blighted sacks might be of a little use as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. The next question comes from Krebus, and they have said, how did the idea of PvP arena rewards come to life, and what was the thought process going into designing this?
Truth be told, I wasn't actually part of the original designing, so I can't honestly say how it came to life. I believe, from what I've read and seen, that there was some desire to let PvPers get access to stuff that's otherwise locked behind things they don't want to do, like grinding Nightmare Zone for imbues, or can't do, such as returning to a patrol if you've got a build that rules that out, and ways of making that kind of thing accessible. Also, some interest in not just hitting the standard builds, in the hope that by putting things a little bit higher than the standard builds, it might give people a little incentive to change their build. Now, we've had a lot of strong opinions about whether that's a good move or a bad move, but I think that's where it was going in the first place. And of course, the overriding design goal that this stuff is untradeable and doesn't turn into money in any significant way. I mean, ultimately, even the ornament kits, you die in the wilderness, something gets past the PKer, but we don't expect it to be enough to warrant a gold farmer army turning up like we've seen in other content.
Great, thank you, Ash. I think the only thing that I would add to that is just the final point of just giving PvPers a route to gear up through PvP, as opposed to doing other content, which they'll still have to do for various different unlocks, quest rewards especially, but currently there's no way that you can get gear that works in PvP by doing just PvP. So this was a way to address that, essentially. The next question doesn't have a name associated. Sorry, Westham.
Sorry. No, I was going to say there's been quite a lot of backlash about, like, well, at least from what I've seen, about essentially bee gloves coming from it, which I don't think, personally, I don't think that's that big of a deal, since Barrow gloves is kind of like a base for all the rest of the quests in the game. You can't really kit out an account fully just with bee gloves. Maybe if it was like 2015 or 2014, you could do that, but you still need DS2, MM2, and stuff like that, which all require a large amount of quest points in the first place.
Vengeance, Barrage, all that kind of stuff. True?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, what are the plans for free-to-play status of the PvP arena, given that the Duel Arena is a free-to-play minigame? Are you going to provide a non-competitive mode like for LMS?
I know this one. Firstly, yes, there'll be a non-competitive ability to just have a fight against whoever you meet. Now, on the PvP arena worlds, you'll be using artificial builds that are just put on your account as a loadout. Stats come with it. If you're on, however, on the non-PvP arena worlds, the standard game worlds, well, the scenery will be sitting there, so we've no particular reason to stop you clicking on another player and saying you want to go have a fun fight with them in the box, and that we've no reason to stop you doing that as a free-to-play as well. So yes, casual non-competitive duels will still be allowed, and that includes a free-to-play. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ash. We've got some questions now that maybe the creators can get involved in and let us know your thoughts. The first one comes in from Baru, and we've kind of answered part of this already because I mentioned about the repair costs and that's how you'll make your money. But their question is, what do the content creators think about the new armors and prayers? Currently, an obvious issue for many is loot. All these new rewards are untradeable and increased power level. Accounts will have more power, more defense, more KO potential than before with no apparent cost. Is this healthy for PvP? So the cost side, I think, we've covered, but if you want to maybe comment on how much you think they should be worth to repair, that would probably be a good way to come into this. Otherwise, just your general thoughts and feelings on the armors and prayers, and maybe we start with PureSpam and then go Westham and Dino to wrap up.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'm more of a edge style PKer in terms of no overheads. The other two mostly do tri-breeding and like deep wilderness style fights. In terms of edge style, I'd say I'm a pure PKer predominantly, although I do a lot of main PKing too, and I've got a med level as well. I'd say the pure one should be maybe a few mil based on what the current best in slot pure PKing gear is worth. The Berserk one or 50 defense one, I think you've suggested it as to be, have to be like a little bit up from that, so maybe like 5 to 10 mil. And then I guess the top one, I'd like to see it at around 50 mil to 100 mil, because that's currently what best in slot is at that level in terms of like full Bandos or Armadillo or whatever people are using. In terms of, is it like much stronger, increasing power level? And undoubtedly, like it is. It's a huge buff. You're getting a lot of max hits. I was testing it earlier, and I'm actually quite excited for that personally, because a lot of the metas nowadays revolve around people sitting like almost full HP and RNG being like a huge element in terms of trying to get people KO'd. So the higher damage potential you have, obviously RNG is still going to play a role, but being able to hit more damage and kill people a bit easier. To make it a lot more fun, both for players that are getting started as well as for the more experienced players that already know what they're doing. When people sesh for a long time and people don't die. As for the new prayers, I think originally it was planned for 70 prayer. Was the humble piety was going to be available to everyone, and you've changed that to chivalry only for pures, which I think is a good change, because otherwise pures would have been really overpowered. And I like the changes personally. Obviously, always being a pure, like I said before, high offense, kind of low defense, glass cannon kind of build has always been a favorite of mine. It's really unique in old school, and I think it's a really awesome kind of play style. So overall, I'm really excited. But I'm not as much of a main PK as the other guys are. So I guess they've got more of an understanding and opinion about where they feel the max stuff kind of sits based on everything else.
Yeah, I had a little discussion with Ian and ChemQ prior to all of this. I think it definitely adds a lot of max hits. I agree with that. I'd say it is overpowered, but I guess that is a bit iffy. I honestly think like adding a few max hits isn't that big of a deal. I believe you get like 7 out of it compared to max strength, or unless you're comparing it to Torva, then it's only like 3 or 4. But obviously, the cost of these have to be adjusted for how good they are. The main set or med level set, whichever one it is, still has to, in my opinion, cost at least 150 to like 200 mil if it's going to be able to make you hit a 90. You can also barrage something like a 42 Fire Surge, I believe it was a 51, and then Dragon Crossbow spec like a 76. That's quite high DPS, and it still adds that extra element of removing damage. While, in my opinion, I think the armor set should probably make you take more damage, similar to what Aggression did on DMM. I think Aggression did something like it made you deal 15% more, but you took 20% more damage.
Yeah, I'd say with the armor, if RuneScape's sort of going down the if the game's sort of going down the direction of higher max hits and like more KOs, I don't think the gear that, for example, this gear that you can get at 98 GS, you shouldn't have any defensive bonuses with it. Like, there's a 10%, if you have the right helm on, you take 10% less damage from the other style. I think it would be better without anything like that. So that if you do use it and you do want to hit them higher hits, you have to like risk it, if that makes sense as well. Like, you have no defense. And I also agree with Westham that it should be incredibly expensive, because from my opinion 90 is a bit too high, but I also see what you're trying to do, because no one really dies at the moment if you don't want to. So I do understand why there's higher max hits coming into the game, but yeah, I am a bit skeptical that it's maybe a little bit too high.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the reduction of percentage damage that comes with the helmets. I like what you're trying to do there, and it's a cool idea and concept, like to play into the whole trying to rebalance the combat triangle. Like, if you get the right helmet on, then you're taking less damage from the different attack style. But overall, I think the whole kind of, like I was saying before, high risk, high reward. Like, you're going to do more damage, but you're also going to be taking a lot more damage. And the other thing as well is like where these armors play a role. I think the question was something about more power, people be too powerful. Like, you can still use the normal gear that we currently have in place, and if you're fighting people that are using these gears, they're still going to be as killable, if not more killable, because they've got lower defense. Obviously, they've got a higher chance to kill you, but if you manage to to defeat them, then you're going to get a big reward for that. So if you let's say you fight this guy 10 times, you might die more often than not. You've only got to kill them once, and then you make profit. So it gives you that kind of that risk versus reward element too if you choose to fight those players, which I think is really nice as well.
Yeah, I think the armor itself has a bigger, it's more likely to be a problem in PvP worlds and scenarios where you do just have the option to one-click teleport out. Whilst Deep Wild, it probably won't be as big of an issue since it is already a bit of a glass cannon setup, and then if it's changed to make you take more damage, it will most likely definitely not be used.
As far as Tribrid, the set's actually really strong because there's not another piece of armor really that you can just camp or 2 items of it and it will give you a bonus. You only have to worry about the helm changes, and obviously if you want to go extra, you can do the ammies and the gloves and stuff. But for Tribrid, I think it'd be kind of nice to have. So you won't have to do like the 5-6 ways. You can just do like a 3-way and be really strong.
Yeah, I mean, that's already what the meta kind of is with like Crystal, Ancestral, and then having like something like an Ancient God Sword or like a Volatile.
Some really interesting points. I like the idea of moving away from damage reduction into damage taken, especially. And also, for what it's worth, may as well just bring it out now. Given what we've seen on the beta, it's not very likely. We will be making changes to those sets and how they work. And the initial thought was to focus more on accuracy as opposed to damage increase, so that we're not massively amplifying the KO potential, but we are changing up how consistent fights feel in terms of damage. How do you feel about that? Maybe if it was increased accuracy, a slight boost to damage, with the damage increased against other styles as well.
I like that personally. We had a discussion about this on my stream with Asper, Westham, and KempQ. In terms of like, if you start pushing the max hits to almost like 100, then it can also be a bit frustrating where people can just, get one hit basically. And I'm sure being in the wilderness as a PVM or someone else, it'll be quite annoying. No, you can just die to that. But a lot of the annoying part about PKing for a lot of these players like Dino and Westham at the top of their game, when they go against people that are also really, really good, people don't die because everyone knows how to eat, and there's an RNG element, of course, if you do hit the accuracy roll, you then got to hit the number roll between 0 and your max hit. So the more consistent hits, the more chance you have for that momentum. Same in PvP. If I go PKing and I hit like 0 on KO or HP X amount of times, it gets frustrating. But if you're consistently hitting that damage more, and you've got more opportunities to kill someone, then I think it's really interesting too. I don't really want to see it replace like Torva or like the best in slot currently, which costs like a bill or whatever, because I think that has a really important part in the game as well. And I want to have that balanced as well.
Yeah, I think I'll sit on the fence on that because I'm honestly not against either the accuracy or the extra max hits. I think 90 is very high. It should probably be dumped to something more like, I don't know, 86 at the most. But me personally, I'm not really against max hits. I feel like a large problem is that people aren't dying. But like you said, if the accuracy is increased, then that could also result in like the same thing, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The one concern I'd have with the accuracy is, and again, I don't know how it would play out, but the Bofa that's currently in the game, if anything, that's fighting that, it feels too accurate, and it's one of the most annoying things to fight as a Tribrid, because you'll be praying the right thing and you'll just keep getting it 20s through prayer, like constantly, no matter what gear you're in. So I would be worried if it did go down that route. Maybe like overheads have to be reworked or something, because if you're praying the right thing, you shouldn't, in my opinion, be getting hit constant like 20 pluses, 30 pluses in this case.
Yeah, the Bofa's accuracy is quite annoying, and I think the Raid's free weapon as well that's getting released now is going to be of similar accuracy to it.
Yeah.
There would be scope to have a set where, while you're wearing it, the overhead prayers effect of incoming damage is changed. We'd be able to affect that as well as all the other things we've ever done before. So rather than the 60% change that overheads normally do, they could be made to do something different associated with what you're wearing in some situations, if that would be of any use at all.
I think that's really interesting. I think if you're gonna reduce damage by doing things correct, then if you do things wrong, you should also be punished for it. And that's kind of what this armor set is meant to kind of emulate is that it's very low defense, so you're going to get hit back a lot if you're not doing things right. But you've got more opportunity that if you are doing things right, you're going to get that momentum and get the opportunity to defeat your opponent. So reworking prayers with that in mind, if you are going to change them at any point to, if you do things right, to take less damage, then if you do things wrong, you should also be more impacted. So it works both ways, high risk, high reward.
That would certainly go with the damage magnifier effect that you guys were discussing a few minutes ago.
Some really good points raised there, actually. It'll be interesting to see how that would play out with the protection prayers as well. I'm sure we're going to have many interesting conversations over the next few days, Ash. Okay, the next question comes in from Mr. G, and I'm just going to say this is a question from someone. It doesn't represent at least my views or other people's views here. It's not a bad question, but they've said, what wilderness PvP changes that does not include a PVMer-based ecosystem would you want to see added to increase frequency of PKer versus PKer fights? Back in the day, wilderness was great when everyone would go Mage Bank, low-level Varrock East or Hill Giants with the sole intention of looking for fights. But now we have a PVMer-based system which has changed this. Curious if there are any thoughts on how to create PKer-specific hotspots again, other than Bounty Hunter.
Dino.
Oh no, where do I start? I would say with the question, how they mention how it used to work. I think a big reason why it used to work is because it was based on a sort of a hunting PVM system. They might have not realized it, but like East Dragons, for example, there would always be a PK hunting the guys at East Dragons, and then the PKs hunt the PK that's doing that. Like that's how it always used to work. As far as trying to incentivize PKs to look for PKs, I don't know if the wilderness should be, in my opinion, I don't think the wilderness should be for that. I think that's where the PvP arena, for example, will come into play. I think the wilderness should remain sort of as it is, but with more of an incentive on the PVMers and the low tier PKs to get involved. Because at the moment, yeah, it's just a few PKs trying to hunt whatever they can because it's quite quiet.
I'd have to agree. I think the wilderness ecosystem of high risk, high reward is such a unique part of MMO, and it's always been iconic about RuneScape as well since the start of it, really, since the wilderness was first put in. And I don't want to see that change, of course. And both as a Iron Man that goes into the wilderness to do things, it can be frustrated being hunted down, but that's kind of the thrill of being in the wild. It's all high risk, high reward and such. But in terms of what changes I like to see, as opposed to just changing that, I used to PK back in pre-OC, back with the old Bounty Hunter system, Bounty Hunter Worlds, and we used to have like a Clan Wars bank west of the East Dragons, used to have Fist of Guthix bank, and those little areas, or the Bounty Hunter bank northwest of Chaos Temple, those banks kind of created hotspots because they felt like there were safer areas you could go into and restock. And then obviously, for example, the Clan Wars bank, a lot of Nubia PKers would go there and then go hunt the green dragons. Especially the loot key system now, you could kill a few green dragon hunters and make a couple 100k very easily, and then PKers would then come and hunt those individuals. So I think without change, I hope to see more wilderness rewards happening in the future, such as the wilderness boss rework as well, of course, and wilderness slayer maybe getting some changes as well eventually. But banks, I think, could be a really nice way to create those hotspots. We've not seen in a long time being looked at.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with Dino as well. Although I will say the PVMer-based ecosystem it's a thing that I've brought up multiple times as well. But it's the only thing that has been tested, I feel like, in RuneScape's history. So to say it's the only thing that works, I don't necessarily know if that's true. I feel like you could test other things as well, just to see if that would go anywhere. Obviously, I will say the increased PJ timer and stuff like that hasn't been the greatest hit, but regardless, I'm open to test other things than just increasing the ecosystem and adding best in slot methods or best in slot or best money makers to the wilderness. I think there are other ways to approach it as well. At the same time, I also now with the increased PJ timer in the wilderness, I truly don't see the point of PvP worlds, for example. if you were to add just the being able to attack 15 combats up and down in like one world in the wilderness, I feel like that would serve the same purpose. And at the same time, I think players get attracted to something when they see other players just running towards it, or like hotspots are created just by passing by and seeing other players engage in PvP and maybe wanting to try it out themselves. I feel like if you hop to a PvP world, you already know what you're doing there. It's kind of, I don't know, it's only really attracting the people that want to go there to PvP in the first place, whilst other players might walk by the wilderness and want to try it out. That is assuming, though,
Maybe
that
there's
the servers could also handle that many people being in a world.
Sure. I wonder if there's maybe something that ties up both what you said, Westham, and PureSpam, with the addition of banks. For example, maybe one of the banks in Deeper Wilderness, the area around it has different combat level bracket that replicates what exists in PvP worlds, so that would then create that hotspot that currently only exists in PvP worlds. But by virtue of it being in the wilderness, it may then also attract others to be around that area and fight in that area outside of those zones, for example, and maybe something like that.
For what it's worth, our former colleague who pitched the enclave in the first place was basing it on the idea of the Clan Wars Bank, a safe island in the middle of the wilderness that would have banks and also some incentive for people to spill out of it and fight in the vicinity. Now, the enclave is, of course, very different from what we remember of Clan Wars Bank. I mean, for a start, it's got some actual portals on the sides rather than just you being able to walk out and fight people directly, and some uncommon behaviour about what you can do in the immediate buffer zone right outside it. Perhaps it was more complex than it strictly needed to be, though, and maybe if it had had much simpler edges like the Clan Wars Bank that I worked on all those years ago, maybe it would serve that kind of purpose a little better.
I think it does. Oh, no, sorry. Apologies for cutting you off. But no, I think it does serve that purpose quite well, actually. Yeah. If you look at worlds that are populated, such as the LMS worlds, there actually has been people PKing in that area. It's not insanely active, but it's active to the point where PKers would go there because they know it's an active hotspot and stuff like that. Yeah. So it has served that purpose quite well. Obviously, with the little extra walk when you do pass the portal still being a safe zone, might have added a little bit of complexity to it. I think most players understand that by now. I think the main problem is just that it is in level 13 wilderness, something like that regardless. Which means that if you get TB there, then you have to tank to the Zami mage, or you can tank to the Revenant cave and try to get like a freeze hug. I guess in this case now, you can just freeze hug anyway. But it's not exactly a place where you can go like just regular Venge style PKing without just getting TB'd.
Thank you, that is actually quite reassuring about it.
Okay, the next question. These are back to... Oh, sorry, did someone want to say something?
No.
Did I cut you off?
No, I was going to say, with the thing with Ferox, and I'm sure it must have gone on back in the day as well, but there's a lot of... So there's like a big dark side to it as well. A lot of luring goes on at Ferox with items such as like Ring of Coins. It's quite mad how common it is. If you go to like the random world, you will see someone be like a Ring of Coins on the bridge to try and get people out, and it does work quite effectively. So with adding more areas like that, obviously, I'm assuming more things like that will take place as well. And then,
honestly, I cannot imagine the Ring of Coins being introduced with any other expectation. I forget where it came about from, but what other purpose could there be for a thing like that?
Yeah, no, like I say, I'm not. Obviously, I'm not for it, but I'm not against that, because in my opinion, Wildy should be, if you get Skulltricked, you get Skulltricked, things like that. But the way the game's going, if it was weird putting like a PK skull prevention on, but then adding more safe areas in the Wildy where you're kind of encouraging lures and stuff, does that make sense?
It certainly makes sense. I suppose the kind of lure where you fell for somebody who's disguised as a pile of coins via the item that turns you into a pile of coins, we might consider that to be on them for not realizing that it's got a white dot on the minimap or something like that. Whereas the tricks that involve, knowing that somebody's timer might run out at this particular moment, or knowing that that those kinds of attacks are not affected by the attack option reprioritization toggle. That's more players struggling to handle our user interface. And while handling the user interface like a pro is definitely part of the skill set, I do see a distinction between that kind of thing that leads to you getting sculled versus using the disguise for I still can't think of any other purpose it could have ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with the Ring of Third Age, as being able to just disguise yourself as a Third Age longsword, for example. There's a lot of items in the game that almost seem like they were made for luring.
I think the PK skull prevention change, though, that's fixed all of that. I don't really see it happening so much. Used to be in the PvP worlds, seeing people try to do that against the unskulled PKers, but they don't get hit by it anymore, so it's not as much of an issue as it used to be.
Surprisingly, no, it's still quite bad at Ferox anyway.
Really?
There's still a whole, there's
It
thing with
hasn't solved everything.
the thing with Ferox is they're classed as safe zones. So people think, they go to the bridge, it's safe. But what teams do is they TB themselves and then appear as like a ring of coins. But because they're TB, the player can then attack them without
in the
needing
safe
to.
zone. Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's a safe zone. But if the player that they try and click on is TB'd, they attack, and then so if anything, in my opinion, that's more like tricking the player than skull tricking ever was.
I mean, with the PK skull prevention at this point, it's a bit of a
I think people just haven't really. Everyone's realised that it's a thing that exists. It was a relatively recent addition to the game anyway. But I'm also with like everyone else on this one. There are certain skull tricking methods that I personally wasn't fond of, but falling for a cash stack on the floor outside of what is a safe zone in a dangerous area is just asking, for you to lose your items. And if you haven't got PK skull prevention enabled, and that's just, and I wouldn't really mind so much to see that continue happening. I'm just conscious that we've got a fair few questions to get through and only a small amount of time, so I'm going to try and just get through. I'll get through this one last question, which is more of an open one, and then we'll go over the individual items in brief, if that's okay. The first one comes from Captain Alpha Walrus, and they've said, if PvP can get special workarounds for quest and minigame rewards, why not let regular players get workarounds for rewards in the wilderness? For example, being able to get the dragon pickaxe from skilling content like the dragon harpoon and axe.
I think in all likelihood we will let players get the dragon pickaxe from such content. Zalcano frequently gets suggested for it. The volcanic mine also springs to mind. Rather nastier, that one. I quite like it for that reason. And I do kind of see that as part of the compromise where we do more in the wilderness for PvP, as making, in the case of wilderness bosses, it's probably going to make them more dangerous. While, that's got to come with some reward to make it warranted, doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of that particular item. I mean, it's not the most expensive item in the world anyway. So perhaps as part of the compromise, we would move that item to be available elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole dragon pickaxe thing has been like one of the major arguments for almost why people dislike PKs. Well, I mean, I can't speak for every PKer, but it's not like we chose for there to be a dragon pickaxe dropped from Callisto. I think most PKers could care less if the best in slot pickaxe comes from Callisto or not. I'd honestly rather see it be moved so it can't be used as like almost like a hinder for PvP updates.
Yeah, I fully agree. I don't know one PKer that would be against the sort of dragon pickaxe being obtained somewhere else, rather than the Woody.
Yeah, like for best in slot stuff, I understand the argument, and I wouldn't be opposed either about moving outside. I think the high risk, high reward, that's the important part of the wilderness that needs to be like adjusted and needs to be that compromise needs to be there. It doesn't have to be in the form of a pickaxe for mining or for Guardian's Room in Chambers. It can be lots of other things, including like PvP specific rewards, which there are a plethora of ideas and concepts for. So
Thanks, that's very helpful. We have also, of course, seen players saying, well, if you take away that unique reason for going in the wilderness, you'll kill the traffic even more. And yeah, there may be people going in there just to get that thing. I'm sure there are, because that's where it comes from. But there are other things in there as well, and there can be more. So as part of the compromise, where we're making stuff likely more dangerous in other places, maybe that pickaxe can be part of the deal where it goes elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I definitely
Right.
agree, and I feel like I don't want one specific item to like hinder PvP updates in the future based on an argument. Well, like a side of the players that doesn't really exist. I think there's a few PKers that maybe care about it, but most don't.
Okay, good to hear it. All right, we've got a few of the items then that we can quickly go through, and I think there are some images to go alongside these. So the first item, we have spoke about a few of them, so maybe we can just recap, but these are the wristbands of the arena, showing the current concept art. As a whole, these are the replacements for essentially replacements for Barrow's gloves that are somewhat pure friendly with a 20 defense requirement for the base version, and then you can get slightly higher accuracy at 40 defense, sorry. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the wristbands of the arena?
As a pure PKer, an edge style PKer, I think these are pretty well balanced, to be honest. Currently, there's not really much incentive to go 20 defense, aside from a lot of multi-clans and pure clans saying 20 defense or 30 defense is the viable, like, the top you can go for, so people get it for mystics or whatever, but there's not really that much worthwhile things to go for 20 defense. And even with this item, with Barrow's gloves at 20, the 19 defense levels from 1, mathematically speaking, like, it's not like super worthwhile going for a lot of players, but there are people that do like the 20 defense build because it's iconic from back in the day, and maybe one day we'll get, corrupt Statius or whatever here in the game, which will also require 20 defense. I'm all for meta shifts and kind of allowing like certain people's accounts to be a bit stronger. I think these are fine and balanced. 20 defense doesn't seem like too big of an issue, to be honest. And you've got the 41 defense ones as well, which give the Zerkers a little bit something better. So yeah, I think these are fine, to be honest. These are well balanced.
How do you feel, Dino? Are you raring to go?
No. When I originally saw them, obviously I was a little bit against the sort of a lot of the rewards seem like replacements of existing things in the game. But as it's sort of gone on, I don't really have anything against that now. I think it would be nice to have, like Ian says, something for 20 defense to hopefully try and encourage people to make different builds again. Because at the moment it's the same few builds that have been around for years.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I've quite like them, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they add a bit more variety. So the 20 defense bracket, I'm pretty sure it was changed to last.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything against the design. They look kind of similar to like what Goliath gloves used to look like pre-UC. But yeah, I think it just adds variety, in my opinion.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you. Let's move on to the next part then, which is just a discussion. We don't have an image for this. Humble Piety and Humble Chivalry. Now, we did originally have both of these prayers as no defense requirements, but in the rewards beta, you'll have noticed that Humble Piety now requires 40 defense, and that will be mentioned in the next iteration of the blog that we have coming out once the feedback from the actual beta has settled. But yeah, Humble Piety, 40 defense, and Humble Chivalry being available at 1 defense. What do you think?
Should I start?
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just going in like camera order now.
Well, again, as a pure PKer, it's nice to get pures to have a little bit more buff. Like over the years, a lot of the new updates and the new like best in slot gear obviously has that high defense requirement, 70, 75 and such. So the med level build has gotten stronger and stronger, whilst the Zerks and the pures have kind of been left behind. We've had a few updates here and there, like the manacles and such, but nothing too huge. So I think it definitely does close the gap, and it'll make a lot of those players really happy as well. Obviously, the med levels still have Rigor and Augury too. I think the change making Piety only 40 defense and not 1 defense is probably a good move, because Pures are going to get a lot of a buff from just the Chivalry itself and from having the new Void equivalent set that's coming out. Yeah, I like the change a lot, and I think it will make a lot of Zerka builds really strong again, and kind of again mix up the meta and have some pros and cons for making different builds. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the change.
I think just
I
one
agree
thing
with
that
Ian
I've
as well.
seen. Sorry, Westham. But one thing that I've seen a lot of players just fail to mention in feedback, where they've said about how you shouldn't give them to accounts that have, got 1 defense. They chose them themselves, and so on and so forth. They are just essentially taking the same name and graphics, which is less resource than having to make like an entire new prayer that would have to fit into a book, for example, that you would probably want to have unlocked via a quest or a new big piece of content that has lore surrounding it. But don't sleep on the fact that these prayers still require the prayer level requirement that they have. And as far as I'm aware, at least, Pures don't typically go to get 60 prayer or 70 prayer, for example, on Zerkas. You'll normally sit at 52 at Smite and leave it at that, unless you're then going up to the next tier of brackets to have access to Rigor and Augury, for example. So there will still be a change in combat levels to some degree, I believe, at least.
Yeah, no, it will add a couple combat levels for sure. And at the same time, I agree with Ian. I mean, I think it will add some variety. It'll also make Zerkers, who largely have been quite a dead bracket past few years, be able to fight back against med levels at least. I think in our last scenario, so like Deep Wild or maybe Rev Cave, it won't really stand a chance still, but like at least you have the element that you can hit close to the same as them and be able to KO them at least. Maybe not outlast them, but at least have a decent chance of fighting back.
Yeah, no, I was definitely again originally against the prayers, but going through all of these, I was originally against this, but I think when Piety was 1 defense, I wasn't a fan of that at all. I felt like I should definitely be locked behind some sort of defense, and that's been moved to 40. I think that's a lot better. I still think I would have rather have seen a new prayer, but when you actually look at the numbers, I understand why you haven't, because there's not a lot of difference in the percentages between, say, if you have Steel Skin, Ultimate Strength on, and then like Chivalry. So there's very little room to actually add a new prayer in there. It'd be like 17% or 16%. So I can fully see why it's just sort of just reused the other ones.
Great. I'm going to jump to, for production's sake, I'm going over to question number 17 on the list now about Humble Piety and Chivalry. And the question essentially just says, since we've had Humble Piety and Humble Chivalry potentially being added, would you guys also consider adding in a humble version of both Rigor and Augury?
So I'm biased on this, because I think both Rigor and Augury should have been 1 defense from the get-go, like they were pre-EOC. I think they were balanced. They could be balanced to be those, but again, I'm a pure, so I'm obviously going to be biased here. I wouldn't be opposed to it if it was just usable in PvP, of course. But that's how it was back in pre-EOC in general. Those prayers required 1 defense; they didn't require 70. They were polled to be 70, and it did pass all those years ago when Chambers came out. So I don't see it ever being changed. But in a PvP scenario, again, med levels are so much stronger, and you get all the defense, you get all the gear benefits of having 70-75 defense. Zerka is a bit weak, so I think at some point having Rigor and Augury for Zerkers again would probably close the gap a little bit and give them that opportunity to be like quite high offense, but still having that less defense and quite a lot of restrictions in terms of gear.
I mean, this is under the assumption that Humble, Rigor, and Augury wouldn't provide any defensive stats, right?
Yeah, they would not. It would just be the offensive stats only.
I guess in that case, I can see that being a thing, yeah. I wouldn't be too opposed to that. As long as they don't provide any of the defensive boosts, then yeah, I don't have a problem with that, I suppose. Although it might take the point out of making a med level out. Med levels is pretty much the only thing people are using these days.
I mean, you still get the benefit of like Arims and Buckler and loads of defense gear, which makes and crystal armor, which does make a big difference, especially in Outlast fights. Like defense isn't, doesn't do anything, doesn't do nothing. It is quite significant. Same with like just mentioning there about having lower defense accounts having access to Rigor and Augury. I'm not saying that Pures and Zerg should be able to use best in slot everything and wear Torva suddenly, because yeah, you are restricted, but the whole purpose of those accounts is to be high offense, low defense, glass cannons, and over the years we haven't been as strong as we used to be. So that's why I'm not as opposed to seeing those changes come in at some point.
I think I'd rather see a particularly Augury, because I think that's incredibly strong. I would like to see him stay at 70 defense, because again, I like there being reasons to be a certain account build, and I feel like West Ham said that them prayers are a very big reason why people choose to go med level, or obviously it gives a big advantage to mains as well. I don't really like the idea of making accounts that, for example, are pure, not as strong, but closing the gap on a med level. I think med should be a lot more powerful, personally.
I kind of agree. I don't know. I think it's basically an either-or situation. Like, you either get Piety and Chivalry, or you get Rigor and Augury.
Interesting. Well, for what it's worth, I know that internally we were considering offering Humble, Rigor, and Augury in the next iteration of the blog that's due to go out. But perhaps after this discussion, there's a little bit more thought that needs to go into that, especially with us not wanting to remove, as you say, that need, or so to speak, the current builds that exist purely because of that, with the med range. Okay, well, we have time to go over just one last part, which I think is the Calamity chest and breeches, and then we are going to have to wrap up, I believe. So if we can get the image of, well, let's just show the headgear set at the same time, because it's kind of all intertwined. So that's the Seika, Korifsum, Malma's headgear set. Oh, we actually have an image here of the Calamity chest and breeches as well. So what do you think about these items? And one thing that I'm going to ask whilst we discuss this as well, are there defense requirements? Because originally these pieces, the chest and breeches, required 50. Well, it's one defense. It was 55 and 78 for the different tiers, and it's now 70 defense, 50 defense, and 1 defense.
I personally think it should be 145 and 75, because I know mixing up the meta and like making people get extra defense levels for like to change things up is pretty cool in that, but people have had these builds for so many years. I don't have a Zerka personally, but I know a lot of people have this 45 defense build in their mind, and people get very attached to their character, and they've been playing the same account for so many years now, and to suddenly say you got to get 5 defense to use this item, and that's that's the only reason to get it. It would still be worth it, I think, to get those 5 extra defense levels, but for 1 combat difference, like, is it really going to change much just for having an extra couple defense levels increase? I think you'd probably displease more people than you would please people by doing this change. So just to make people happy.
Point go both ways there, though? If you say if it's only 1 combat level, then it's only 1 combat level that you've got to get, right? So it's interesting that you've raised that point yourself, actually, because it was how I was going to wrap up with things. Now, originally, obviously, the armor pieces were set at 55 defense, which is 10 defense levels higher than 45. And we lowered that to 50 as a compromise because of the complaints, around existing builds that would then have to adjust and change to be able to use these items. But the reality is, let's face it, the gear is way too powerful to be given to the hands of existing 45 builds without any sacrifice. And the sacrifice being that 1 defense level and then creating a new kind of like build. So I think the options are we either heavily nerf the items so that they're not extremely strong at 45 defense, but they're okay, or people just look at it as okay, if I want this extra strength now, I have to go for those extra defense levels. Because the other part of the problem is that if we go to 45 defense, then what about the void accounts that are at 42 defense, and then say, well, it's only 1 combat level, you may as well drop it down to 42 so that I can also use the armor because I've had this account and I don't want to change it now. And at what point do you say enough is enough, and you know what, if you want the extra power, you are going to have to get extra levels? as opposed to
It's-
it being
yeah.
the same way that it has for the last 15 years.
Yeah, I can see both sides of the argument, to be honest, but like for the nostalgia game that Old School is for so many players, like 45 has always been like the Zerka build. I don't know. It doesn't personally affect me. I think if I was personally in that position, I probably would get, as a PvPer, I would get 50%. It would be worthwhile getting the 50%, 50 defense, but it would suck for a lot of people who've always had that 45, like that clean 99 combat, or that clean 100 combat, whatever build they are. They'd be like 101 suddenly, and they'd be like, oh man. It's not that deep. I personally don't think it's that deep, but I think a lot of players do feel that way, which is why it's just something to consider.
I mean, there can't be enough of a gap as well to the point where, like, if you're 55, most of the players are probably going to go, well, I already have 70 prayer, now I have 55 defense too. What's the point in just not going to 70? I think 50 sounds a bit more adjusted, a bit more fair as well. I do agree with you, Ayiza. I don't think it should be a thing that, like, everyone should get with the pre-existing builds. You should have to go a little bit outside of the build. I think, like you said, the original was 78 defense, right, for the max one? Yeah, that to me, like, 78 defense is fine. It's 3 defense levels. It's the same way with, like, VLS, for example. You can use at 75. I didn't really agree with that either. I kind of felt like it might as well just be 78.
Yeah, it's fair. I see both sides of it. I just know a lot of players that have 45 are going to be like, man, I've got it at 50 now, but hey, you're right. If you want the extra power, you know, that's a sacrifice. One combat level is only one combat level. It's not really like super deep, but it is still like an iconic thing that players have got an attachment to. So I see their side of it too. I see both sides.
I would say with that, the guys that are saying about the Zerka build, the Zerka's still obviously going to be there. Everything the same is still going to be there. This would be seen as something new, I would imagine, anyway. Which is why I was okay with it being 55 originally, but 50 is fine as well. I agree with West Ham that I more care about the lift of the 75 cap. I would quite like to see items require 78 attack, 80 attack, 80 defense, things like that. Because at the moment everything stops at 75. So I would, that's what I'd more push towards rather than the sort of 40-50 mark.
Yeah, that's fair. I think with these armor sets, so I was just saying, I think with these armor sets in particular, sometimes other updates have been suggested that have been like 80 attack or 85 attack or whatever, and it's sometimes not worth it. But this armor, to be fair, it is very strong, so it does seem quite balanced if you want to increase the requirement. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say pretty much similar to that is that it is a jump up in power, and just plopping that on, maybe it's not the best route. But there is interesting point that you raised, Dino. Maybe there is more that we could do in the requirements that aren't just focused around defense. I know Modash was keen to look into that. We had a quick chat before the stream started. So I would just say look for the next iteration of the blog at least, and what changes have been made following the feedback from the beta. But that is, unfortunately, all we have time for today. We've run over by 10 minutes. I'm about to get my butt kicked by production, so I'm going to have to wrap things up here. First of all, I just want to quickly run over the announcements. ! Game update, where you can try your hands on the new PvP arena rewards. Try all the new equipment and let us know your thoughts. There's also more info on the League 3 rewards and Pulse 76 changes, so ! Game update for that. Then we have ! Launcher. The new Jagex launcher is in open beta. You can access Old School RuneScape and all of your other Jagex favorites all from one place. RuneLight will be coming to that soon as well. You can check out all the information and download the launcher with ! Launcher. I want to say a massive thank you to PureSpam, Westham and Dino for joining us. It has been great insight to hear some of your thoughts on the rewards. Hopefully I'll catch you all streaming, playing with them again, or limit testing them over the next few days. Do you have any closing words?
Thank you for having us. It's been a fun discussion. I'm sure we'll all jump in calls again on our own streams and continue to discuss and figure stuff out. But yeah, everyone's got different opinions, and we all just want the same thing, right? And that's for PvP to thrive and for everyone to enjoy the game. And we appreciate you guys as a team, the Old School team, looking to change PvP, and you know, this commitment we've seen from you guys, especially in recent months, has been really great. So keep it up, team, and thank you for that as well.
Oh yeah, basically what Ian said. But thank you for having me. You kind of summed it down to the point where, like, I don't know what else to say. But it's been great seeing Jagex pay attention to PvP for sure. Obviously, yet again, like Ian said, it is just all opinions. No one knows for sure if we're right or wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. I might not have the opinion that you have, but hopefully that's not enough to like make someone, I don't know, hate me or me hate you.
I don't know. I found out the hard way. If you have a different opinion, people people won't be happy with it. But no, I would agree that with PvP this year, a lot more has been done with it than the last sort of 4 years, I'd say. So it's reassuring to see, even though I don't agree with a lot of the things, but it's nice to see people are putting actually a bit of thought behind updates regarding PvP this year.
Well, hopefully there'll be plenty more of them to come. We'll just have to see what happens the rest of this year. Yeah, well, thanks to the three of you. And then lastly, I just want to say big thanks to yourself, Modash, for joining me here. We appreciate you giving some good responses to some of the questions. And also big thanks to Mod, Spear, and Druid behind the scenes for making everything work and showing us elemental runes 3 times in a row. And then lastly, to the mods that have helped out in the chat as well, moderating things. That's going to be it. Thank you, everyone at home, for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And if for whatever reason we don't speak before, have a great weekend. Bye.